So Trump is now cutting childcare benefits. Yay!
So while y'all were sleeping, Wigs R Us canceled, froze childcare payments across the country. Yes.
Hey lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda's channel. Thank you so much for all the love and support. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, I came across these stitches on my For You and I thought to share. We Americans are reacting to the fact that the federal funding for children is being freezing because of what has been going on with the Minnesota and all of that. Lovelies, despite a lot of controversial take on the Space social platform, and I was able to put up some of those stitches. I'm just going to roll the clip as well as some of the stitches I was able to put together. Internet is not having it. People are like, why would the 50 states be affected just because of what is happening, in Minnesota? And that has to do with Nikki, the YouTuber. Lovelies, leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes.
So while y'all were sleeping, Wigs R Us canceled, froze childcare payments across the fucking country. Yes, places like daycare centers will not be receiving government funding right now. And I want y'all to thank this man right here. Now, y'all know the right-wing YouTuber, Nick Shirley, who went to Minnesota to claim that Somalians were defrauding the government by using daycare centers? Well, of course, Wigs R Us took that to heart. He even retweeted that shit. Now the Department of Health and Human Services is freezing all child care payments to all states. And this directly comes from the Trumpy administration. He says state funds will only be released when states prove that they're being spent legitimately. Don't they do that when they apply for the funding? Now, the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Administration for Children and Families decided to activate our Defend the Spend system across America and will now require justifications, receipt, or photo evidence before they make a payment. I want y'all to note that this at first was just supposed to be for Minnesota because of Nick Shirley's investigation, his fucked up investigation, because the shit wasn't even true. But according to the Associated Press, they decided to spread that bitch nationwide. And once again, Mr. Shirley is mentioned, not by name, but he's called an independent journalist. First, Head Start cannot use certain words like black, woman, immigrant. Now you cut funding to child care at the beginning of the year. People are going to be out of work. Most of the places ran by people of color or black people are about to be denied funding, which is going to put a lot of areas at risk. A lot of parents are going to be in a fucking bind because they dropped their kids off at daycare, at child care, in order for them to go to work to make money to pay for this fucking child care. Welcome to 2026. So while y'all were sleeping, Wigs R
Scams in Minnesota should not surprise anybody.
Because they're the result of the same exact manufactured outrage that Republicans have been using for decades. Because just so we're clear, this was always the end goal. This is exactly why they manufactured this fake scandal in the first place. Republicans know that they cannot outright tell you that their plan is to make your life worse in every possible way just so they can give even more tax cuts and taxpayer-funded subsidies to their billionaire buddies, because they know that you will be upset at that for good reason. So what they do instead is find a scapegoat, usually a community of black or brown people, often immigrants, who they can then accuse of committing crimes that magically can only ever be addressed by eliminating programs that you and your community rely on too. Republicans run the same playbook over and over again. In the 80s, they created the welfare queen narrative as justification to eliminate the Aid to Families with Dependent Children program. By the time that it was revealed that the overwhelming majority of those welfare queen stories were either outright false or were grossly exaggerated, it didn't matter anymore because they'd already successfully taken basic income support away from millions of struggling American families. They used the same playbook in the 90s and early 2000s when they told y'all that greedy fraudsters were suing companies into bankruptcy, pointing to and scapegoating 80-year-old Stella Liebeck after she was horrifically burned by McDonald's coffee. Now, in 2025, most Americans know that Stella Liebeck was actually a victim of a corporate and political smear campaign and that her wounds, which nearly killed her, were worth suing over. But that doesn't matter because in the meantime, Republicans successfully passed legislation to shield corporations and make it 1,000,000 times harder for everyday Americans like you to get justice when harmed by corporations. Hell, this isn't even the first time they've run this same exact playbook on y'all just this year alone. They used the same exact tactics to keep y'all from realizing that that big, beautiful bill of theirs was going to absolutely devastate rural America, rip healthcare away from millions of y'all, and leave millions of conservative families without the food assistance that they rely on to help feed their children. All they had to do was get on TV a couple of times and make vague allusions to hypothetical legions of able-bodied 21-year-old black men who were playing video games all day and living off of free Medicaid somehow. They've got y'all so conditioned to go along with this playbook that they don't even have to offer up specific scapegoats or detailed descriptions of the problem they claim exists any longer. They can just hand wave in the general direction of any community who doesn't look, live, or love like you, and you'll just happily nod along. Honestly, the only thing surprising about the newest manufactured outrage over Somali daycares is that they even bothered to get this specific about their newest chosen scapegoats when y'all have shown that that effort isn't even necessary.
You know why these scams in Minnesota?
Breaking news on New Year's Eve, and yes, this is real. The Trump administration has decided to freeze all child care funds across all 50 states effective immediately. This is putting daycare workers and families on edge immediately. These are funds that help pay for daycare subsidies, keep the centers open, and help parents afford child care so they can go to work. Why they say they did it? Well, the Trump administration has said the move is tied to large-scale fraud, particularly daycare centers in Minnesota, initially brought by Nick Shirley in his YouTube videos, a MAGA right-wing Republican, and now a, huge social media star overnight because his coverage over these daycares, which has turned out to be debunked. Because of that, though, the Department of Health and Human Services are now requiring documentation from all 50 states, and they say this has to happen before they release any money. To be clear, this is not Congress voting to permanently end child care funding, but it is a nationwide pause and slowdown. States cannot access this money until they meet new federal requirements. That means real delays with real consequences starting immediately. State care workers and child care providers say this decision could shut down centers immediately, forcing providers to close classrooms and literally leaving parents scrambling for care. What does that say on New Year's Eve? Obviously, many are calling the timing especially cruel. And literally, offices are closed and families have no warning. Way to kick off the new year, right? Minnesota leaders and advocacy groups are accusing the Trump administration of collective punishment, arguing if fraud happened in one state, it should be handled just like case-by-case basis, not literally freezing all funds to all 50 states. So as you know, states are now rushing to submit paperwork, documentation, and all this kind of crap that they now need in order to receive these fundings. But they have not released an official timeline when these payments will resume, so now families are stuck in limbo. So yes, the story is real, it is developing fast, and it could affect millions of families across the United States. If you rely on daycare assistance, this is something you may need to know immediately. As always, I will try to keep you updated with the latest, so follow along for more.
So Trump is now cutting childcare benefits. Yay! As a single mom, that totally doesn't change my entire fucking life. I just want to remind everybody this is part of Project 2025. They outlined this a long time ago. They want single moms out of the fucking picture. They want moms that work back in the home so we can just be fucking baby factory. Yay! There's nothing I wanted to accomplish with my life. Thanks, Donald Trump. Without childcare, I can't work. Without working, I can't get money. Without money, I could become homeless. And when you become homeless, they take away your kids. And this country totally doesn't have a history of abusing kids or trafficking them once they're in that system. Oh, also, they're building a bunch of concentration camps in a bunch of warehouses all over the country to put you in once you become too poor to function in this society. Yay! And they can put you in there simply just for looking homeless or seeming like you have any mental illness at all. You a little depressed? Lock you up, because then they can just use you as legal slave labor. Fun. Or force you into being that baby factory. Welcome to 2026 and Happy New Year's, guys. It's going to be so fun.
Serious and how planned this all was. to force more women out of the workforce than any other point in history since the end of World War II. Trump has cut federal funding to daycare centers in every state. And all they needed was a virgin chud to show up at daycare centers either during off hours or with two men and a camera demanding access to small children, pretending not to know that the reason they're locked down is because of men like them. This was planned in Project 2025. And for the women who think this isn't going to affect them because they don't get federal funding for their daycare, they're going to be in shock. When you cut funding to the bare bones daycare centers, well, then they close. And then the middle tier, they start raising their prices because their wait list goes up. And then the hoity-toity fancy daycare centers, well, their prices go up too. And when women can't afford these daycare centers, they start to close. And then women can go back to these violent marriages that J.D. Vance is such a fan of. And then they convince girls in high school that there's really no point in going off and getting a career and an education because you won't be able to use it anyway if you decide to have a child. This is some handmade stuff, and it was planned, and it is an attack on women everywhere.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
I just heard that the Trump administration is freezing federal childcare funds nationwide. What's going on with that?
Well, if you ask me, it's the next step in pushing the American working class deeper into wage slavery, straight out of Project 2025, and likely an attempt to force women out of the workforce and back into patriarchal gender roles. Of course, the Trump administration claims otherwise. They say this is because of an alleged multi-million-dollar child care fraud ring uncovered by a right-wing shock blogger in Minnesota, and that the funds need to be frozen until states prove that the money is being used properly.
How so?
Well, the vlogger Nick Shirley went to several Somali-owned child care centers in Minneapolis, filming them empty and claiming fraud. Over the holidays, and with several reposts from prominent conservatives, including VP Vance, the videos blew up and quickly dominated the conservative online presence, conveniently lining up with the release of the first batch of the Epstein files. The issue is that several of the centers Shirley claimed were being ignored by Democrats have actually received multiple inspections, citations, and warnings, some of which were for overcrowding. While, of course, any child care center receiving many citations is concerning, the existence of the citations in the first place shows that those centers are being actively monitored and that Shirley's empty daycare narrative doesn't hold up. To be clear, there have been many serious child care fraud cases in Minnesota involving hundreds of millions of dollars and possibly up to $1 billion in lost funding. One of the largest COVID-era cases was actually centered in Minneapolis, but it and others were already under DOJ investigation in 2022 and prosecuted well before Trump took office. Despite that, the conservatives are trying to spin this as something the Democrats ignored, even dragging Governor Tim Walz into it. And even if the allegations of fraud were true, responding to fraud in one city by freezing child care funds nationwide is such an extreme overreaction that it's hard to see as anything but intentional. This move affects over 1.5 million children, many likely belonging to Trump's own voters in low-income states. And since the administration says funds will remain frozen until states provide the vague additional verification and administrative data, it's reasonable to expect selective enforcement, especially against blue states. So what happens? Child care centers lose funding or shut down. Parents, traditionally women, are pushed out of the workforce to watch the children. Families lose income and are driven deeper into poverty, making them less able to resist an increasingly oppressive system. Children lose access to safe, stable environments during critical years, with long-term consequences that can follow them for life. All while the Trump administration simultaneously dismantles healthcare and education across the country in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Once again, all from the party of family values.
News: HHS has now effectively cut child care funding federally to all states. Did you know that this is going to increase domestic violence and intimate partner violence? For those of you that know already, this is a feature, not a bug. But in case you would like somebody to lay it all out for you, this is why. I'm an educator in domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and human trafficking. Increased financial dependence equals an increase in control. What causes domestic violence and intimate partner violence is power and control dynamics. Economic dependence is the number one thing that traps victims. It is a major tool of coercive control. This type of a shift is also going to strengthen an abuser's hold on somebody, because it's, if you can't afford to leave, how do you leave? How do you attend court, go to shelter, work additional hours if you don't have childcare and can't work? This increase in stress is also going to contribute in a volatile way. And like a lot of these policies, rural and tribal communities are going to get hit the hardest. Childcare deserts are already a thing. This will worsen that. It becomes structural, systemic entrapment. I have long talked about how the dynamics of power and control start at the very top, like in our government, and trickle down into our homes. Legal, custody, disputes, disagreements, this will also become increasingly weaponized. It's already very weaponized. Childcare and somebody's ability to provide childcare is often discussed in custody cases. Here's the thing, economic stability is violence prevention. Policies that impact women impacts domestic violence, gender-based violence. Full stop. These mechanisms that increase people's risk of being victimized go up when something like this happens. It has been happening all along. People have been talking about this from the very beginning. On a hopeful note, community organizing will and continues to be the most important thing we can do. Follow along for more like this. Let me know what you think in the comments.
This country don't really care about fraud. They don't really care about scamming. This country really has a selective moral outrage when it comes to mismanagement of government funds, and it definitely has a it definitely has a ethical, selective moral outrage when it comes to people getting over with taxpayers' dollars. That's just point blank, period. But I don't want to just be too much of my feelings. According to Bloomberg, it say the Trump administration is freezing the child care payments to Minnesota and demanding a comprehensive audit to identify any illicit activities. These folks is figuring out a way to chastise the entirety of Minnesota's children because Somalis, or I'm going to say Somali because I want to be careful on how I'm even thinking about the groups and how these groups get lumped into thinking of the worst example of that group, and how now this whole entire collective community has to either aid, defend, or be held accountable for the worst decisions we can think about of people having in that group. My grandfather always said every group has assholes and they usually stink. My high school teacher said that every group has idiots. You know what I'm saying? I want to say that every group has every group.
Seriously, lovelies, this whole thing actually started like a joke. It all started like a joke. One Nikki guy who is actually a conservative, and he decided to go on his own to make research on the Somalian people concerning the child care fraud. He went on to do so many investigation, and he found out that there are millions and thousands of, dollars that's been put out there, and which was all swept under the carpet because of the, fraud. But the thing is that people are still talking about how this guy is not even transparent with what he's doing. So many people are even talking about how him and his other, his family, I think both his mom, father, and everybody is just, going out there to look for a said fraud, even though, yeah, there is fraud ingoing. And now, because of this simple thing, because of this thing that has happened, it's not a simple thing, even though the guy is not even 100% genuine himself, 50 states will be affected. So many innocent people will be affected. And now people are asking questions. Is it that this this is just a trick to get these people's plan on the table? Maybe this present administration has been looking for ways to cut off this child funding, or maybe there is not even money for this child funding or children fund. Maybe, just maybe, allegedly, maybe there is no means to even fund this. And now they have seen a very good opportunity to make people suffer, to make life so difficult for people. Even though there is something ongoing there is some kind of fraud. What does that has to do with other states? What does it have to do with the other state? Why not solve the problem in the Minnesota and leave other state out of it? So why is it that other state is also going to pay for it, if not something that is pre-planned? Just come to think of it, lovelies. Okay, let's just assume that this fraudulent act is happening over there. The Somalians have gotten themselves involved with all sort of fraud, and this Nicky of a guy goes on there, he finds his own. So what happens to tackling the problem or the business in that Minnesota? So why taking it out to other people who has nothing to do with it? Why taking it out on people who are probably innocent of this fraud? And this brings us into Project 2025. These guys are just gradually bringing up or bringing in their plans all along. And let's not forget, everything but to distract the files, the everything but just to distract it. They'll do anything, they'll use any measure to just distract it from coming to daylight. So this now is a new thing. Like, this is just so ridiculous, lovelies. People are probably going to resume, work, children going back to school, people resuming maybe next week, and they are coming out with this. How do they even want single mothers? How do they want them to cope? It's definitely affecting everyone. It's going to affect every single body. And this is it. From Minnesota to every other state getting involved, going to suffer the consequences, even though you've not done anything wrong. So what is stopping them from tackling the real issue? What is stopping them from actually focusing more on what is happening over in the Minnesota and sort it out and charge whosoever that is involved with the fraudulent act? So why taking it out to other people who probably is not even involved with this? This is totally MSS up. It is. And this is exactly what this administration stands for. They don't care. They don't care about the pharmacies, even the single or the middle class. All they care about is what they gain to achieve. Don't be surprised that people will just rant, and there is nothing these guys will do about it. Anyway, lovelies, wanna just leave me your own thoughts in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please, if you're not subscribed to this channel, you got a huge favor to click on the subscription button, like, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one. Your own thoughts in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So please share this video, subscribe to the channel if you're here to do that, like, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.